Ever find yourself scrolling through the news, you know how it is, and you bump into one of those stories, ones, where you just can't help but think, what could possibly make someone do something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a question that's been around forever.
And today we're taking a deep dive into something called the Lucifer effect to maybe get some answers. We're looking at this Medium article. By the way, the title kind of says it all. What makes good people do bad things? The Lucifer effect revealed.
Catchy title.
Totally grabs your attention. But
Yeah.
okay, let's break it down. What exactly are we talking about when we say the Lucifer effect? Sounds kind of ominous, don't you think?
It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it? But no worries, we're not about to summon any demons here.
Okay, good to know.
It's a term coined by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, and what it really gets at is transformation. How everyday people, just normal folks, can end up doing some pretty awful things given the right, or I guess wrong, set of circumstances.
So less about someone being inherently evil, more about the power of a situation to, like, change their behavior.
You got it. And it's not even just about power in the traditional sense. It's more nuanced than that. Think about external factors, the pressures of a social environment, even the way our own minds work. All these things can kind of gang up on us and make us act in ways we never thought possible.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little. What are some of these, like, external factors and social things that can lead someone down that road?
Sure. The article breaks it down into three main ingredients, you could say. First, you've got the situation itself. Like, imagine feeling totally anonymous, hidden in a crowd, or maybe you're in a position where you've got all the power. Those situations can really mess with our sense of boundaries.
Right. You feel invincible, like the rules don't apply.
Exactly. And then there's the whole social aspect, the pressure to fit in, to go along with the group, even if something feels off. We humans, we're social creatures, we crave that acceptance. And finally, there's individual differences. Some people might be more susceptible to these pressures based on their personality, their past experiences, things like that.
It's like a recipe for a disaster. All these ingredients mixing together until, bam, someone snaps.
Exactly. And that's when things can go from bad to worse really fast.
It reminds me of that scene in Lord of the Flies, those schoolboys stranded on the island. Started out okay, but with no rules, their behavior.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Total chaos.
It's a classic example of how situations can escalate.
And speaking of situations escalating, the article brings up a big one, the Stanford prison experiment. Probably heard of it, still sends chills down my spine.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Just to recap, they took a bunch of college students, told them they were part of this psych study, right? They randomly made some of them guards and the others prisoners in this fake prison setting.
Right. Right.
And well, it didn't exactly go as planned, did it?
It's one of those things where even though you know the outcome, it's still shocking to see how quickly things spiral. But the Stanford prison experiment, while ethically there were a lot of issues, it really gives us a powerful illustration of the Lucifer effect in action. You have these regular guys, students, but the ones put in charge, the guards, they became so controlling, even cruel, and the prisoners, stripped of their identities, treated like...
They were nothing.
Yeah, they became withdrawn, totally passive. It's chilling.
It's scary how just giving someone a role, putting them in that environment, can change them so drastically.
Right. It's like the situation itself brought out a side of them no one knew was there.
Exactly.
And that's what's so fascinating and honestly disturbing about this study. It's not about good versus evil as like something you're born with, but about the power of the situation to, I don't know, override everything you thought you knew about yourself.
Makes you think about all the times in history where something like this happened, but like for real.
And unfortunately, history gives us way too many examples to choose from.
Right. The article talks about the Holocaust, which is just, where do you even begin? It's impossible to understand how something so horrific could happen on such a massive scale. But the Lucifer effect, it offers a terrifying kind of logic.
Right.
You see regular people caught up in a system of hate, so much pressure to conform, so much fear, and they end up participating in unimaginable acts.
It's a stark reminder that these things, they aren't ancient history, they're warnings. And it's not about saying we're all inherently evil or anything like that, but we do have to acknowledge the power of external forces, how they shape our behavior, often in ways we'd never expect. Kind of scary to think about.
Totally. And the article, it doesn't stop at historical events. It also brings up Abu Ghraib, the prison, where American soldiers abused those Iraqi detainees.
Yeah.
That one hits closer to home for a lot of us. Shows how even people we see as the good guys Soldiers, people we trust to protect, even they can get caught up in a system that corrupts them.
Absolutely. Abu Ghraib, it's like a harsh wake-up call. Even those who are supposed to uphold human rights, they're not immune to the influences of a toxic environment. And those same patterns, they pop up again and again throughout history.
Yeah.
Like the Rwandan genocide, just awful. People turning on their own neighbors, fueled by all that propaganda and fear. It really makes you realize how fragile the whole thing is, how easy it is for hate to take over.
It's intense, for sure. And hearing all these big historical examples, it can feel kind of overwhelming. Like, do we even stand a chance? Are we all just wired for this kind of darkness? Is it inevitable that good people will end up doing bad things under the wrong circumstances?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one that's plagued philosophers and, psychologists forever. And the answer, unfortunately, it isn't a simple yes or no. I mean, yeah, we've seen what humanity is capable of, the dark side. But we also have to remember that we're complex. We have the capacity for incredible good and, yeah, terrible evil. And it's often a whole bunch of different things that determine which path we choose.
So it's not like we're all just ticking time bombs of evil waiting to go off.
Not exactly. Our brains are amazing, adaptable, but they also take shortcuts, to process everything quickly. We call these cognitive biases. They're usually helpful, in everyday life, but they can also lead us to make some pretty messed up judgments, especially when we're stressed or things are uncertain.
So our brains are trying to help us out, be efficient, which most of the time, great. But sometimes it backfires.
Exactly. Like, we're hardwired to conform, to go along with the group, even if it goes against what we personally believe. It's a survival thing, right? There's safety in numbers. But put that same instinct in the wrong context, and suddenly you've got people going along with harmful stuff.
It's like that saying, right? If all your friends jumped off a bridge.
There you go. And then there's this other thing called moral disengagement. Ever catch yourself making excuses for something you did? Trying to downplay it or shift the blame.
Oh, totally.
That's moral disengagement at work.
So like trying to make ourselves feel better about doing something we know is wrong. Like, oh, I was just following orders, or come on, everyone else is doing it.
Exactly. We use these defense mechanisms, we're not even always aware of it, to protect how we see ourselves, even when we're doing things that aren't exactly ethical, let's say.
So our brains, they're trying to protect us, which is good, but in a way, that actually makes us more vulnerable to this Lucifer effect. That's kind of a mind bender.
It is a lot to take in, but the more we understand these mechanisms, how our minds work, the better we can fight back, challenge our own biases, and hopefully make better choices.
Makes sense. So if our brains are wired for these like shortcuts and defense mechanisms, what can we even do? Is there a way to rewire ourselves to be like immune to the bad stuff?
I wouldn't say rewire. It's more about building self-awareness and developing strategies.
Okay, so what works? How do we avoid falling into the Lucifer effect trap ourselves?
Well, everything starts with awareness, right? Pay attention to how you think, how you react, and the influences around you. Are you quick to conform? Do you make excuses for bad behavior?
Time for some serious self-reflection.
We got it. And on top of that, make an effort to cultivate empathy, genuine compassion. When you can really see the humanity in others, even when you disagree, it's much harder to dehumanize them, to justify mistreating them.
It's about fighting that us versus them mentality that causes so many problems.
Exactly. And this isn't all on individuals either. The environments we create, whether it's our workplaces, our communities, society at large, they can either bring out the best in us or
can bring out the worst.
Yeah. We have to pay attention to power imbalances, make sure there's transparency, accountability, and cultivate cultures of respect, genuine empathy. And that brings us to the workplace. That's a place where the Lucifer effect can really thrive if we're not careful.
Totally.
Yeah.
This isn't just some abstract psychology thing. This stuff happens every day in offices, boardrooms, everywhere. So what are some red flags? How do we know if our workplace is vulnerable to this?
Yeah, so you've got these toxic work environments, right? And that's where you really see the Lucifer effect take hold. Places where negativity just hangs in the air, nobody respects each other, and it's all about competition, not collaboration.
So how do we know if our workplace is one of these places? What should we look out for?
Well, a lack of transparency is a big one. Like, if people are too afraid to speak their mind, to challenge things, that's not a good sign. And look at how the leadership operates, Do they walk the walk when it comes to ethical behavior? Or do they look the other way as long as the numbers are good?
It all comes back to leadership, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. Ethical leadership, that's the key. If you want to stop the Lucifer effect from taking over, it starts at the top. Leaders, they need to create a culture where people are accountable for their actions, where you can speak up without fear of, repercussions.
You got to be able to say, hey, this isn't cool, and know that someone's actually going to listen.
Exactly. And that there will be consequences for crossing the line no matter who you are.
Okay, so we've talked about why good people do bad things, the psychology behind it all, those historical examples that honestly still kind of freak me out, and how this stuff shows up at work.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
And it's heavy stuff.
Mm,
But the article doesn't leave us completely empty-handed, right? There are things we can do to, like, fight back against these darker impulses, both as individuals and together, right?
absolutely. Knowing is half the battle, right?
Yeah.
Realizing that none of us are immune, that's the first step.
Right, because once you understand that, you can actually do something about it.
Yep. Like we talked about, cultivating empathy, that's huge. Question your own biases, we all have them. And when you see injustice, don't be silent. Speak up.
So it's like personal responsibility, but also looking at the big picture, how we treat each other, the systems we build.
100%. And don't underestimate the importance of self-care, surrounding yourself with good people. Feed your mind with positive things. It all helps build up that resilience.
Build up your defenses against the darkness.
Exactly. Just like taking care of your physical health, you got to look after your mental and emotional well-being too. It takes work, but trust me, it's worth it.
Well said. It's a journey, that's for sure. So to everyone listening, as you go about your day, think about the situations you're in at work, at home, wherever. Ask yourself, are there any subtle forces at play that might be enabling, even encouraging good people to do bad things? Because understanding that, that's the first step to actually making a difference.
Yeah.